In this episode, we're joined by a musician whose career has traveled from the top of the pop charts to the outer limits of progressive and experimental rock. Pat Mastelotto powered the unmistakable sound of Mr. Mister before bringing his inventive blend of acoustic drumming, electronic percussion, and fearless improvisation to King Crimson, Tuner, amongst many others. We're sitting down with Pat Mastelotto. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. We've got a great show ahead. I'm not going to waste too much time. One ask, hit the follow button. This way you get notifications when new episodes come out. If you're new to the show, we've got a whole back catalog of stuff that we'd like you to check out. And there'll be a lot of information in the show notes as we talk with Pat. We're going to kind of give you a guided tour. So this way you can kind of visit the points that we talk about. Some will be maybe to Spotify, definitely to the Tuner website, just so you can kind of follow through Pat's long, very varied career as well. So Pat Mastelotto, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Thanks for giving me a request and all that.
Yeah.
Say hi to Jack when you see him, our common acquaintance, Jack.
I will. I do have to say, Pat, you are worth the salt in my tears.
Oh, that's kind of a dad joke, you know.
It is, but I figured, you know what, let's go there. Let's start, let's start it. I figured let's start at the beginning there. So,
well, that wasn't the beginning, but that was the first record I was involved with that entered the top 20, I guess. Not sure how far it got, 15 or 12 or something.
Yeah, Martin Briley. So let's even go a little bit further than that. Yeah, Pat, I want to kind of go back to the beginning because you've got such an interesting drumming style that's evolved, and I really want to kind of find out where it started, because, you know, when you're young and you're self-taught, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So what were you listening to as a young person, or what sounds were you hearing that made you say, this is what I want to do?
Well, you just told me a little story about how you tried to play guitar and then you thought bass would be easier with 4 strings. I kind of did the same thing. It was, you know, the British Revolution coming into the States in the 60s, the Beatles, the Kinks, Dave Clark 5, you know, just rabid for music as about 8 years old, probably. 7 or 8 years old. And at my mother's request, tried to play some piano. That wasn't any fun. At my request, I said I want to try to play guitar. Had the little nylon string guitar for a couple lessons. That didn't really work for me. I was still trying to, you know, still into digging music, but I wasn't participating. And my mother put me in a summer arts program in between, I guess summer school, you call it, like summer school. And they had a band in there, and I was trying to play French horn because I'd seen an episode of, it's pretty crazy, but like 9 years old and French horn. I want to play French horn because Ilya Kuryakin, in an episode of The Man from U.N.C.L.E., was playing French horn. He went to Eastern Europe and had to infiltrate a symphony or whatever. He had his arm in a cast, so he didn't actually have to play in the episode. Anyway, I said, I want to do that, like a spy. I want to be a spy and have a French horn. And as soon as the teacher said, we walked in, and the teacher said, I need drummers. And he looked at me, he says, you got big hands. You go back there. So he didn't even give me a horn. I didn't even get to start on the French horn. And that put me on a drum, to do thrum, 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 that kind of stuff. And I did that for a summer or two, like a little piece of rubber nailed on a piece of wood. And that was enough that my parents let me get a snare drum. I had a snare drum with a stand and a book. And I had a band. I had a couple of guys from my grade school, Kevin and Michael. We're probably 6th or 7th grade. We went to Catholic school, and you had to sing for the nuns maybe twice a year for music grade. Dudes don't want to stand up in front of class and sing. So we said, can we play a song? I got a little combo here. They let us do that. We played Sound of Silence. Think about it. 2 acoustic guitars, no vocals, snare drum. Maybe I had a tambourine or a hi-hat. probably horrible, but it grew from that. And does that answer your question? That's how I ended up on the drum kit,
Yeah.
and
What,
wasn't long. Hendrix and Cream. I was mad for Ginger Baker, uh, uh, John Bonham. So many great. Dave Clark. I was really loving, and Ringo. Ringo's number one. I'm sure I wouldn't be doing this if Ringo hadn't been in my life.
yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Ringo because recently, it's only recently or relatively recently that people are starting to really understand what Ringo was doing. He was always thought of as a very basic drummer, and
Yeah,
now there's plenty of people trying to play like Rain and Ticket to Ride and all these things, and realizing that there's it sounds simple, but there's a lot of nuance in
absolutely.
what he
And
was doing.
he's left-handed. That's part of his scene is he plays right-handed, but he's left-handed. He doesn't play like Simon Phillips or Billy Cobham where it's left-hand lead. He plays right-hand lead, so you'd think he's a right-handed drummer. And I never picked up on it as a kid, but part of the quirkiness of his fills is because once he starts to move out of the groove and play a drum fill, he goes left-hand lead, and that makes it really quirky. Uh,
Yeah, so all those different sounds because you listed a range of from Dave Clark 5 to Cream and Hendrix is a wide swath of different styles of drumming. So were you just kind of picking from all? Are you? Did you feel early days you were an amalgamation of that of just kind of
I didn't
all
even
those
think.
things?
I didn't think about it, Dean. It's
Yeah,
whatever's on the radio that you like.
yeah.
And living in a smaller town in Northern California, KFRC, San Francisco station. Love and Spoonful, Kinks, all sorts of whatever's on the radio, Mamas and Papas. It was mostly British stuff. I just went all to British. I guess by the time I was well in eighth grade, I think is when I heard Crimson the first time. I would go to the public library to hear things that I couldn't hear on the radio. But I was already looking at not trade magazines, but Cream or Crawdaddy or maybe Rolling Stone. I've still got the first issue of Rolling Stone. It's upstairs here.
Wow, of course.
Uh, yeah. That led me to trying to explore more. I was very interested to check out Colosseum. I'd read a lot about John Heisman. Who's this guy? I want to check out John. Went to the library, checked those kind of things out, and stumbled on Wake of the Poseidon that had Cat Food, the Crimson song Cat Food. And that was like, whoa, I got to go get that other record. In fact, somehow my timeline might be wrong because we had the Court of the Crimson King. My parents let me buy 4 8-track cartridges that went in the car. So I had the Court, I had Led Zeppelin 1, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, and Simon Garfunkel. Like I think they did the Graduate theme.
Yeah.
It was I was mad for In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. That was a big deal in my life at that age. Um, yeah, so I'd explore more. The same day I heard Cat Food at the public library, I also heard Tony Williams. It just was an interesting looking cover, Tony Williams' Lifetime with Larry Young, I forget, the keyboard player, and John McLaughlin, I think, is on that same
Was on
record.
that too?
Anyway, and then I start to explore more to find my way into FM radio stuff, other radio stations up there. I did have a couple lessons. I had the 1 or 2 lessons there at that summer arts thing. Uh, I signed up for band in high school, but I only did it 1 year. I realized right away that's not for me. I'm not reading music. I have to hear it enough times to memorize it or learn it. Uh, we did one. I did one parade where you wear the wool suit and you're out marching. This is for the birds. And the ultimate one, I'd already discovered drugs. Here I say drums and drugs. So I'm like 13 years old and smoking weed, and I'm out there on a football field with the marching band playing the girl from Ipanema, and I have the clave part because I can't read the snare drum line or anything. So that was all kind of a frustrating thing. But I did. There was a good music teacher there, Mr. Christensen, and during that year, and he was everything. So he wasn't focused just on the drums. But I remember I brought him in because I'd already discovered Mahavishnu Orchestra, Intermounting Flame, and I could not. I'd play along with records. Is how I kind of learned to play, playing along with records. And I'd play along with this Dance of the Maya, and I just couldn't figure it out. I can play these shuffles, but this thing's it's not working. And I took it into Mr. Christensen, and he pointed out to me, he said, "Oh, they've dropped a beat. They've dropped a 16th note, you know." Like, wow, you can do that? Like, that's like a bar of 15, or I'm not sure. I can't, I'd have to go listen to it again. I just try to learn it. A lot of things I would play odd meter. I don't know they're odd meter. I just play the riff, you
Yeah.
know. Honestly, I didn't know Money was in Seven, Pink Floyd Money, or All You Need Is Love, or you hear it a lot on Beatles tunes now. You hear the way Ringo or the Beatles as a group would navigate. John's lyrics in particular would usually have an extra word or syllable. Even Bungalow Bill, you know, there's bar 10 in there, you know.
Yeah, so changing the time signatures became a whole nother thing for you to, a whole other area for you to
Well, I didn't
experiment in and learn.
understand. I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
I was enjoying it. In fact, even at that point in my life, early on, I would really get intrigued when you punch through the radio station and you enter a song in the wrong place and you can't find the downbeat. You hear the downbeat here, and then when the vocal comes, oh fuck! So it sounded so peculiar. And then later, when I meet Gavin Harrison, I've got Gavin's Rhythmic Illusions book and stuff. That's a lot of what drew Gavin into that too. Was that great feeling when you start to hear a piece of music and you can't identify the downbeat or you misidentify it, and the feeling you get when you're able to notch yourself, you know, bring the canoe up again, you know. Uh, yeah, so yeah, I thought about it more. I went to some college stuff. By the time I got to LA, I moved to LA when I was 17, not quite 18. Uh, do you want me to tell you this story? I mean,
Yeah, go for it. I was going to ask you about
go
how you
ahead.
went from a three-piece doing a dicey version of Sound of Silence to session work. So it sounds like it sounds like we're getting there. So
Okay,
take us along.
well, I was lucky to play with older guys. By the time I was about 15, I was playing with the guys that were in college. Uh, and it was a very eclectic band. We had original and cover tunes to do a 5 hour bar. I could play bars. When I was 15, 16, I was a big enough guy, grew a stubbly little beard. And this particular club, Chico, California, was party capital of USA in those days, Chico State College. So I'd drive about a half hour over once I had a car, or the guys would come pick me up. And uh, the bar we played like 3 or 5 nights a week, I could step in the club and onto the stage. That's how they let an underage kid play there. So I was playing a lot. This thing about 10,000 hours, if you read Malcolm Gladwell or different things, you know. So I was acquiring my 10,000 hours from a very early stage. And that whole band, it elevated. We won the local battle bands, all that, blah, blah, blah. The whole band moved to the Bay Area, a bunch of hippies in a house, uh, you know, 5 nights a week, club gigs, Lake Tahoe. I was commuting up to Lake Tahoe when I was finishing high school. Reno, not Vegas. I never did Vegas. Well, I did Vegas later, but in those days when I go to Nevada, it was Reno and Lake Tahoe. And my dream became I was seeing, for instance, Jim Keltner, Jim Gordon. These names are showing up on, wow, he's playing with George Harrison and he's playing with Jackson Brown. Wow, Joe Cocker. He says, how's he get all those, you know? And I started the session musician. I didn't really know what that was. I just thought it was a guy like that was, you know, Hal Blaine. He's jumping all over. I see his name on all these records. That's what I want to do. I don't want to be in one band. I want to play with all these guys. Uh, and that led me, oh, yeah, that's how I met Kenny Watson. Kenny Watson was a first call session player in LA. His primary instrument was vibraphone. Um, and he happened to live, my parents had moved to Los Angeles. When I had left that small town in Northern California, my family had moved to Southern California, and I left with that band and lived my hippie lifestyle. And then everything crumbled, and I had to move back in with my folks. I was broke, got my lamp, my ashtray, my drum set, you know, and moved back in for about 3 months with my folks again when I got to LA before I found another band and could get out and share an apartment with the guys and stuff like that. But in that time, my mother's neighbor was Kenny Watson. And so she took me over to Kenny. She said, my son plays drums and wants to break into being like you, a session guy. And Kenny says, well, do you read? I go, no, I don't read. He said, well, before I can teach you anything, you know, melodically, we have to just understand what the note values are. Let me introduce you to my friend Joe Porcaro. That's Jeff Porcaro's father. So Joe, he wasn't taking students, but he said, because of Kenny, okay, you can come over and audition. So I had to audition. I was maybe 18, had to audition for Joe. I'd been playing. I'd actually been making a living. I've been supporting myself on these bar gigs when my family had left. They didn't know that I scooted off and was living my own life there. Um, Anyway, when I played for Joe, he said, "Stop! Listen, you've got no time. You've got no chops. You've got no technique. This really isn't for you." And I'm like begging Joe, like, "No, dude. If you just help me, just unlock a few things, I can figure this out. You know, I'm already getting by, making music, playing 5 nights a week, and I'm enjoying it." So he reluctantly said yes, and he gave me a metronome. He pulled out a metronome. I had never thought about a metronome. I'd seen him on the piano, you know. I don't know what that thing's about. He had what's a Franz. It's the one with a little light on it. And my lesson was at 60 BPM, which is very slow, to play one hand goes down. He showed me how to hold the stick. He gave me a better grip because at that time I was playing like a caveman, kind of like that. Anyway, he gave me a grip and told me at that tempo, when one hand goes down, the other hand goes up. Go home. And I did that for a month or two and came back and I was flamming with the click. And he said, "Go home. You haven't learned the lesson." So I had 3 lessons with Joe. Frustrating, but I did get some information out of that. And then I was off on my own in bands and eventually living in East LA. I started to go to LA City College. It's over on Vermont. Uh, because the other guys in the band, nobody gets up till noon. I was like, "Dude, I'm up at 5 in the morning. Let's do something." So I'd go to school at 7, take piano, theater makeup, music theory, and they had a percussion ensemble. Great teacher, Dave Smith. So I learned a lot from Dave Smith. Went there maybe a year, on and off, you know, if we didn't have gigs. Uh, it's an evolution. I mean, just picking up gigs. I guess the Martin Briley record you mentioned, Salt and Light Tears, I would have, uh, that was probably about 1980 when that happened, 79 or 80. So, um, yeah.
So how, the according to Kenny, or the barrier to entry was being able to read music. So how were you able to insert yourself into session work? Because you've done a lot of session work. So can you talk a little bit about how you were able to get in? Because I think once you get in, probably, and show people that you can do it, then you get
Well,
the momentum going.
you know, I was never doing heavy orchestra dates and stuff like that. I was lucky enough that I could tag along sometimes. I was working with a keyboard player, Michael Boddicker, who had massive synthesizer thing. He did all the Michael Jackson stuff in those days, but he also did NBC Rockford Files and all those kind of things. So he'd let me tag along, and those were real sessions, man. I mean, they're cutting TV cues, and they're on a deadline. It's mostly Mike Baird, Lee Sklar. I could kind of sit behind the gobo and watch it happen. Session musician, you're stretching it for me because I was a rock drummer, and rock bands were getting signed. And lucky enough, I might be in a few of these. And the big leg up for me there was when Mike Chapman was a producer that did Blondie, The Sweet, The Knack, My Sharona. He just around that same time. And he had a partner, Chin and Chap. Like they wrote Ballroom Blitz, that's Chin and Chap, Nicky Chin, Mike Chapman. And they got their own record label under RSO. Um, and they signed 4 acts. Nicky signed 2 and Mike Chapman signed 2. I was in 2 of the bands. So that became a problem at first. Mike and Nikki called me in the office and said, "You can't be in 2 bands. You got to pick, you know. It's a disservice to the artist if you continue like this, you know." So I made my choice. I played with the one artist, and then it wasn't long before the other artist is making her record and says, "Well, you got to go back because she's not happy with any other drummer until she gets back to you." So they released me for a few weeks. So I started to get session work like that. And honestly, I mean, I was do whatever. I did a lot of demos in the basement at MCA. Brock Walsh, Andrew Gold, Russ Ballard, who did the Alanis Morissette stuff, and Francis, the same engineer. So I would do those sessions. I think it was usually like $50 a song. It was usually me and Paul Fox and Dennis Herring, Davey Farragher, like a little rhythm section that had a vibe. And they started to make me special charts. They realized that music's reasonably simple. Backbeat on 2 and 4, and but I get lost in these second endings. So they made me some special pat charts. What do you do when you get the money? I said, well, and they say, you go to the bank, right? And they write the bank. I said, no, actually, I go over to my weed dealer. And so they put a little pot sign there. That was the first or second ending. You go to the bank, that kind of thing. So they'd have a pat chart ready for me. And then after I met the mistress and we had a real hit, then the phone's ringing. I mean, I'm the same guy. I don't play any different or read any better, but I have a golden touch now. So, and
How
sometimes
did
like,
that feel then to feel like you were kind of laboring through or being a working musician to then all of a sudden having a million selling album on the chart. I was looking at the top albums from '86 and it's a stellar class. It's Sade, it's Bruce Springsteen, it's Huey Lewis, and Mr. Mister is right smack in the middle of that, and deservedly so, because that album, Welcome to the Real World, when I looked at the list of top albums from '86, shares nothing in common. It kind of stands on its own. So how did that experience? Because it seems like it happened feels like it happened relatively quick, because you guys had the first album, I Wear the Face,
yes,
and
which was
then
kind of a stiff. That
yeah,
record didn't do it. People had big plans for us, and that record didn't do that well. And the big gift there was Paul Atkinson, who was the A&R guy at RCA is the label we were on. Paul was the guitar player in the Zombies, a very musical guy, and he believed in us even after the first record flopped. And we asked him if we could. We, being really Rich and Slug, you should understand. Rich and Slug, the keyboard player, and John Lang and the manager George Giz, they were called Pages. They had a band before. They'd already had 2 records at Epic and a record at Capitol. They were signed by Bobby Colomby, drummer from Blood, Sweat, and Tears, who also signed and produced Jaco Pastorius when he was at Epic then. And he was there the day I auditioned. Bobby Colomby was that close to their team, that he wanted to come down and see the drummer auditions. Um, so I forget what I'm going to try to say is that the great songs and the success of Broken Wings, there was a lot of people involved. It wasn't like I had any golden touch. Rich and Slug are writing great tunes, and it was just the right time for us to hit the charts. And we toured a lot. And
yeah. I was watching on YouTube. There's a concert from the Ritz, I think from '85.
yeah, that's a good one because that's just before it took off. I mean, we were in maybe the top 20 or top 10, but we hadn't had that. When I go back and watch that, I go, that's our old set. And then if you see the Daytona Beach where we're playing Spring Break a year or so later, uh, it's got some of the material that appeared on the next record, and I can see we honed our show down a little bit. But yeah, I like the Ritz. That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been a whirlwind, because now and then you're opening for bands. All of a sudden, Mr. Mister is in demand. Like, everybody's looking for Mr. Mister to either have their headline their own shows or open. So it seemed like
Yeah,
it must have felt like an embarrassment of riches at the time. Like, wow, okay,
yeah, just trying to keep up with it, and simultaneously, even before the Misters, I think I had met Danny Wilde, and through Danny, Phil Solom, who are the Rembrandts. So I've been doing their demos, and other people I can't think of, Champ Davenport, Mark Anthony Thompson. He's Chocolate Genius, if you ever find that record.
I'll have to check it out.
That's with Abe Laboriel, but if you go back,
Okay.
his real name was Michael Anthony Thompson. I'm on a couple of those records, very good records. Yeah, so I was staying busy, and things got busier.
I was just you landed the perfect segue in 1994. From what I read, you've gone on a 32-year tear of almost nonstop working with all the projects you've got, and it seems like in '94 you joined King Crimson. So it seems like this 8-year-old Pat that was listening to King Crimson was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's unbelievable. I, I don't know. You give me goosebumps talking about it because you know, I'm sure a lot of people had a dream like that. And why did it happen? It's
Was it surreal? I mean, did that like
yeah, yeah.
how was this? Why me? Was it almost? Did you almost feel like a little imposter syndrome? Because I know sometimes people feel like,
Oh yeah,
well, do they really understand who they're getting, or would you feel
yeah,
that your way?
yeah, yeah. I definitely get the imposter syndrome. More the older I get, the more I feel it. Uh, I was just bouncing along back then. I'm just really lucky. I auditioned with Sylvian Fripp. It wasn't King Crimson, um, and the opportunity was odd because uh, I had ran into. I was trading a piece of gear through the Recycler magazine, and a DBX 160 trade for $200 or trade for question mark. OBO, that kind of deal, and or best offer. And this guy calls me. We traded a Leslie cabinet. I have a Leslie cabinet out here. Why would I need a Leslie cabinet? But I was home recording already in those days, like 8-track Fostex or something, TAC maybe, that I would borrow from Danny. Danny and Phil had. That's how we made the first Rembrandt record. Was on that 8-track TAC or Fostex. I can't remember. Um, anyway, he happened to mention about the David Sylvian gig, that they were going to tour, Robert Fripp, David Sylvian, and that they didn't have a drummer because Jerry Marotta was on the record, but he wasn't going to do the tour. And so I asked him, how do you call? How do you get an audition? He didn't know. This guy's name is Bill Forth, but he had Trey Gunn's number. So I called Trey Gunn out of the blue. Hey, dude, I'm a guy out in California. I heard about these auditions. What's going on? And Trey basically says, fuck off. I'm just about to get on a plane. I don't have time to talk to you. The auditions are on Monday. This is on a Friday. I believe it was a Friday. It had to be. Uh, but he gave me the manager's number, who was over in England. So I called the guy and said, hey, I'm a guy that would love to have a crack at that gig. And I think he said no. We're not going to fly you over. The auditions are Monday. You won't know the material. And I said, well, I won't ask you to fly me over. If I can get myself there, can I have a half hour to play? And I also said, I think the record's already out at Virgin. They've got advanced copies. And I had played with XTC a year or two before that, Julia Fordham, some other people on Virgin Records. I said, if you as the manager says it's okay, they'll probably let me have an advanced copy so I can understand the material. And I think he called me back. I think he called back and said he must have gone and checked, who is this dude? And and I'm lucky because it must have been 5 o'clock in London by then. They were closing shop. I'm just barely caught him. And anyway, he let me have an audition. If you can get over here by Monday morning, which is what I did. I had frequent flyer miles that I've been saving, and I used everything I had because it was very difficult to get a flight on a day's notice.
Yeah.
So.
What was it like meeting Fripp for the first time? Was it?
Uh,
He's kind of he has a reputation
yeah,
as a taskmaster, but I
yeah.
think that's not the right word to use. He just wants what he wants. He wants the music a certain way, but that's the reputation going in, right? I mean, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'd read enough articles. In fact, I was such a Crimson fan. I'd seen. I first saw Crimson in '73 or '4 at the Cow Palace. They were opening for 10 years after. I was still living in the band in San Francisco, and then when that all collapsed, I moved to Los Angeles. They were appearing again at the Shrine. So I saw them again, and they did a longer show because they were the headliner. And then I'd seen them in the '80s. I saw the Discipline tour. I actually worked on the Discipline tour as one of the gophers, stagehand kind of guys. So I could get into the show. I knew some of the people at Wolf and Rissmiller that were the promoters. The next time they came through, they did Beat. I saw that at the Greek. The next time they came through was a weird one. I didn't see the actual show after Three of a Perfect Pair, but they did a TV show called Hollywood Palace, and I went down to that taping. So they were playing live and doing 2 or 3 takes of each song. Whenever I could, I used to go to those midnight special tapings. They were awesome. I got to see Weather Report and just so many things I saw there where you get to you can find a seat to get a weird angle in on the drummer. Um, anyway, so like you say, I knew Robert could be uncomfortable. So the audition was at Real World Studios, and it was out in a gazebo. It wasn't in the big room you see on TV a lot of times, but they've got these other outbuildings. And the way we were set up there, Robert was straight in front of me, and Sylvian on one side, Trey Gunn on the other. And we played, I don't know, 15 minutes, a half hour. And Robert put his guitar down, put it into his guitar stand, but the loop was still running. And he walked out. The door was behind me, so he walked out behind me, and I kept playing with Trey and David, and loop was going, and then somehow I realized, oh, he's not gone. He's standing like right here. He's at my shoulder. That kind of startled me. Anyway, we stopped. There was another drummer coming to audition. They said, we're going to stop now, and Robert said, I want to speak to you outside, boy. I thought, oh boy, here it goes. He's really going to, get the haircut now. And amazingly, I stepped outside the door and he handed me a piece of paper he was writing on. He says, I don't know what will happen with this gig. It's up to David. He says, but this is my home phone number. If you ever need a recommendation for anything, have them call me. And I, wow, man. And he could, I guess, tell I was in shell shock. And he said, is there anything else I can do for you or something like that? And I said, well, yeah, can I get an autograph? Because he doesn't do autographs. Um, so he signed my drum head, which I had brought. Did I bring the snare drum? I must have brought the snare drum from the States. I had one. When I came over to the audition, I didn't bring really any luggage. I brought one trap case. There was no visa, no crew. I had to schlep myself through the subway, through the tube, staying at a friend's house.
And then you used what they had there.
Yeah, the drum kit was there, but I'm sure maybe I brought the drum. I must have brought the drum because the drum head I had all my notes. Something like a song like Darshan, that's like a, I don't know, 15-minute song. And the first event happens like at 7 minutes. So to write a chart where it's like, but I actually knew, after 600 bars, there's this fill that brings in the next section or whatever. That would all be written on that drum head. Anyway, so that was the end of that audition. But when I got home, I'm making the story shorter for you. I get home, they'd already called my wife, my ex-wife, my wife at the time. As soon as I got home, she's crying. Hey, they called. It was great. I called the same manager, Richard Chadwick. I called Richard. Richard says, yeah, you've got the gig. He says, we just need to figure out the money. And he said, we're not cheap and you don't seem greedy. And I think he offered me $2,000 a week. And I said, take it. Done. No sense. I'd do the gig for free.
Yeah, I was going to say dream fulfilled, but you didn't want to say that either, right? It's kind of like, well,
Well, I would have laid it out there. Yeah.
Wow. And that must have been a whirlwind of actually stepping on stage as a part of King Crimson.
That was David Sylvian and Robert Fripp.
Yeah, but then you transitioned into Crimson.
It wasn't quite a transition. We said goodbye. That lasted, I'm not sure exactly, but let's say October, November, December. We said goodbye in Sicily, where the last gigs were actually at Royal Albert Hall with David Sylvian. And then they added 2 more shows. We went down to Sicily for the last 2 shows and said goodbye, maybe a week before Christmas. And I knew Robert was starting Crimson again. He talked about it a lot while we were touring. He was making phone calls a lot. I knew the lineup was going to be Baloo and Levin with Trey and with Jerry Murata on drums. And we said goodbye. And about 3 weeks later, in January, maybe a weekend to January, he called and he said he'd seen a vision and he sees 2 drummers, me and Bill Bruford. And there you go. I said, what does Bill think?
Mind blown for you to be with Bill Bruford as well?
Oh, absolutely. Now, just as nervous as meeting Robert to meet Bill. I'd met Bill one time. He came to one of the Royal Albert Hall shows. And so I just met him briefly in the hallway right outside the dressing room. And,
I can only think from someone that's been a fan for so long, how surreal it must have been then, not only to be on stage with King Crimson, but then to be on stage with Bill Bruford,
unbelievable,
also playing drums and not, alongside.
I hear you. I just thank you, Robert. I mean, I'm really lucky that it happened, And it's not just Bill. I mean, you got Adrian and
Oh
Tony. I
yeah,
mean,
of
it's like,
course.
wow. This is, I'm playing drums and looking actually a little bit that way to see Adrian, big smiling face, you know. So,
Yeah. Wow. Let's talk a little bit. Since we're kind of getting into
yeah.
the Crimson era and all the projects after, is you're also a big proponent or a big user of drum technology.
Yeah.
So
That would have
how does
been,
that? How did you? How much
okay.
is too much? How did you get into it? And do you feel like if how much is too much, or are you like the more the better, the more stuff that broadens my palette I want to use, or
Yeah, I mean, when it's right, when I want to use it, yeah, yeah. I got into it because that same music teacher in high school, Mr. Christensen, he would have played Silver Apples on of the Moon and switched on Bach and things like that, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer were happening. And Carl Palmer's got doo-doo-doos, little Pollard drums or electronic drums. So I was way intrigued by that. And then when I worked with that guy Michael Boddicker, that synth player I mentioned. Uh, that would take me to sessions at Universal and different places. But he had modular Moogs, and we had pitch to voltage converters. There was a guy named Bob Easton that had 360 design, and he developed a lot of high tech stuff right then. So I just fell in love with that stuff. It's as fun as playing drums, just turning knobs and stuff. It wasn't really drum machines yet. These were synthesizers. Then working with Mike Chapman because he had just come back from doing Blondie and they did Heart of Glass. He had that 808 beatbox that's on Heart of Glass. Uh, and I had realized early on I had trouble playing with the click, which were, when I got to LA, the first clicks I heard were Uri. They're just quarter notes. And if you're a drummer playing boom, bam, boom, you're right on top of the click. You don't hear the click if you're in time. And so I'd freak out, like where anyway, I realized I was much better with some kind of percolating percussion thing, like the 808. Hey. So that would be my subdivisions. And so I used to carry this silly, I've got it over there on the wall, little Roland rhythm ace, like a lounge player would have with his keyboards. Um, and I'd bring it into like a rock session, and I'd say, "This is print this," and they're like, "We don't want that on our record." I said, "No, no, that's just for me.
yeah.
That's I'll play the AC/DC beat or whatever."
Yeah.
But
Just to have that in the back, just carrying you through, so you knew because you were so precise on the click that it sounded like
yeah, I
nothing was
wasn't that
or that nothing
precise.
was happening, right? Like it was like,
Yeah.
well, did I miss it? Or
I heard a very good description when you say I'm precise or anybody's precise with the click. When you get a level and you're trying to level something, if you're holding that level and you try to put the bubble in, you can't do it. It's like, and that's what it's like staying in time. It's constant. The band is moving, I'm moving, things are moving. The next big switch was the Misters. When I auditioned that day for the Misters, they had a Lindrum. They were already out. I knew about them, but I couldn't afford one. Because I got the audition, they immediately gave me the Lindrum. They said, "Here, you take this home. We don't need it. We got you." So then I could start programming on the Lindrum. And that was very expensive at those times. That was $3,000 or something. So the Lindrum got me fucking sessions. Al Jarreau, Patti LaBelle, those kind of things. I didn't play any drums. Maybe I did cymbal crashes, but that was all program stuff. So that's not my time. The box is
yeah,
quantized.
yeah,
And
literally the sound of the '80s.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm still. I mean, the one from the Mistress is right here. I've set up in my studio recently a bunch of beatboxes. I'm trying to get back to beatbox flavor, but there's the one we did Broken Wings with. Can you
Oh
see
wow,
that?
yeah, I can see it
Yeah, it's
absolutely
pretty
gorgeous.
dusty. It's even got the old tempo markings and all that kind of
Wow.
stuff. It's still rolling. I spent a lot of money repairing it, but it's back to making sound. And anyway, that led me down the beatbox thing. And then as music changed, I guess technology and evolution of like I mean, I was already using a beatbox with David Sylvian and Fripp and my Simmons, the Simmons SDS. I didn't take the Lindrum in those days. I had a little tiny one that I would use, a little Alesis beatbox. Um, anyway, it all grew by the time we're into the 90s. Square Pusher, everything else with Boards of Canada. What else? It's Aphex Twins, all this stuff coming in. Talvin Sign, just so much electronica. So I could enjoy delving into that. And I realized it gives me, I can offer a couple different things if you're going to make a record, if you're the producer or the artist or whatever. I mean, I can give you the tribal human guy, rock basher, caveman, or I can give you a very sophisticated, well thought out, well programmed, if that's what we want to do, you know. And by those days, we were using Cubase or something like that. I forget. My friends had a program where I could alter the notes, you know, with a MIDI scale, and then so it was even better than programming the box. I could run that thing in sync with on 2-inch tape and and keep fine tuning the drum programming.
Yeah, I think the word that comes to mind is textures.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
you know, adding these different types of, you know, in things where needed and where it makes sense to kind of create an overall feel in
yeah. I mean,
the
the
piece,
XTC
especially
record.
live too.
Yeah, I mean, XTC is a pretty good example because they came in with about 30 songs. I think we tracked 16 on the record. It's a kind of a double record thing. Um, there's 4 songs on that record that are just played, no
Mm-hmm.
click, just played, straight up on the floor in the band together.
Mm-hmm.
There's 4 songs on that record that are played to a click but played live. There are 4 songs on that record that the drum machine is the kick drum and maybe the shakers and maybe a tabla part,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm playing on top of that snare drum and drum set. And the last option is like the way we did Broken Wings. We put everything into pieces. So that's the Mirror Simpleton, because I'm just having to learn it to play at camp. Doom doom pat doom 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 pat doom 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 pat doom doom doom. The kick drum is actually a Linn drum because it's so consistent and driving, and it gave us this consistent bottom. And we're trying to get XTC on the radio. You know, Madonna's on the radio now. It's beatbox stuff, man. They want a really tight groove. And then on top of that, I played just the snare drum as an overdub, which is what happened on Broken Wings also. That's a machine foot and a machine shaker. I would have put the hi-hat, the cymbals on, and the snare drum. There's no tom fills or anything in there. But for the X3C song, yeah, playing one component at a time, which the engineers in those days loved it. You know, they could sonically treat the snare drum. We had an engineer for Broken Wings for that record, Welcome to the Real World. Paul DeVilliers was working with Yes, and they had just had Owner of the Lonely Heart the year before, and that's how that was done. So I
Yeah,
know
Trevor
Paul
Horn
DeVilliers.
literally constructed
Yes, in
more like
pieces,
music
just
architecture.
yes, just the snare drum, just the tom fill, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that was what we were chasing, that kind of fidelity, sonic
Uh-huh.
fidelity, and control over the performances.
Yeah. Wow. It feels like you've got a foot in both, where you whatever the song needs is what you're willing to provide. If it needs a standard or acoustic standard style drumming, you're okay with that. But then you've got no problem switching into, well, if we need the bells and whistles and the electronics, I'm good
Yeah.
there too. That you're able to, that, you know, with the, you know, just the multi talent.
Well, there would be maybe traditionalists, or I don't know what we would call them, but my deal was always the ends justify the means. I don't care what it takes. I want you to get a fucking hit record, whoever this artist or band is, and whatever way makes you comfortable, let's go there. But let's try to. If I have 2 cents to put in there, I'm going to try and think, well, what sounds the most contemporary, like radio now? What gives it the most solid foundation that it could possibly be R&B or not just straight up rock and roll.
All right, let's talk a little bit about, or I want to roll off for everybody some of the projects since 1994 that you've been involved in, and then I want to ask you a question about them. So
Okay.
there's the King Crimson project and associated project with a K, project, Mastica, Stickmen, KTU, tuner, two, and then tuner. Um, do you feel that, because a lot of these you work with you'll work with artists from these other projects on other, and then kind of have offshoot projects. Do you look at all those as one big extension, or when you go into a Stickman project versus a tuner project, are in your mind, are these separate things, or do you look at the whole thing as one extension of a large project that you just happen to be working on different people with?
No, because the people are different.
Yeah.
The different needs or the different approaches. David Kohler, Eastern European guy, is going to be very different approach than even Trey, who's actually got very European sensibilities,
Mm-hmm.
but just different vibe. Stickman and Tuner are very close because there's only one member that's changed. So Stickman is with Marcus and
And
Tony
Tony.
Levin,
Mm-hmm.
and then when Tony wasn't available, he's busy with Peter Gabriel, and Marcus and I were going to carry on and keep busy doing things, and we brought Trey, and
Mm-hmm.
Trey's my good buddy, so why not? But we have some overlapping material that we play.
Mm-hmm.
But even if we're playing the same song, which we do, maybe two songs with the same, they're very different. The difference with Trey or Tony, uh, it, it completely changes the complexion of the music, and for me, it changes the feel, uh,
Yeah.
and maybe possibly Stickman is a bit more of a rock band,
Mm-hmm.
and Tuner is even more experimental. I mean, we're pretty experimental with Stickman. I mean, the new record, if you've heard it, Let's Thrack Again. I mean, our single, we're playing 5 and 7 at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a nutty approach, but it gets even weirder with Tuner.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because by the time this episode comes out, your new release, Rendezvous Rodeo, will have just come out.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's available for pre-order. So I'm kind of new to this section of music. So for me, it's a new experience. Listening to this type of music in a long form, and kind of taking the journey with the artists and see where it goes. So how do with Rendezvous Rodeo specifically, it's a live recording. How did you guys go about deciding? Okay, we know we want to have a live recording, and this was all recorded in at one specific show, correct?
Yeah.
So how did you? What's the process of? Well, did you single out? Is it the venue that comes into play when you want to make a live recording? Is it what set list we're going to do? Because I'm sure you have to plan out for more than one gig to record to make sure you capture
The best performances. I mean, that's
exactly.
typically what happens. You record everything and you go, oh, that night back in Chicago, that was the best version of this. And that night over here in Cleveland or in
Yeah.
Tokyo, that was the best version of that, when you A-B everything. No, we took a different approach. We'd already made a live record with Tuner uh, that was all the improv. We do improvisations every night as sort of connective tissue between a lot of the songs.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's 7 or 10 songs in the set and maybe 4 or 5 improvs. So we released those improvisations. That was our second Tuna release. It's called Tuna for Lovers. It sounded like I said tuna, but I meant tuner. Anyway, uh, we could have made another one of those, but we realized it's about time to start revealing our interpretations of these classic Crimson songs. We play Lark's Tongue and Aspic Part 4, Construction of Light, and Level 5, which are 3 songs that Trey and I were involved in the writing and the building of those songs. So that made sense to do. We do some stuff out of Trey's catalog and Marcus's catalog. So this particular record, Rodeo Rendezvous, we were somewhere way up in the Northeast, Vermont or Maine, and it was a stone church. It was an unusual venue. We had changed mixers on that tour. Robert Fraza had mixed us before, and Elvin Patrick was mixing that show. It sounded really good, and in particular, we had one guest that night, which was the guitar player Reeves Gabrel,
Yeah,
that
from
played
Tin
with
Machine,
Bowie.
and he played with Bowie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and The Cure
yeah.
for the last however long. He was there, and afterwards he was like, his mind was blown. So there was a lot of reasons that I guess it would have been Marcus that probably went right back and said, I want to listen to that show.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, oh, this is actually top to bottom a really good show. Let's like take all the audience all the talking out, trim it down to whatever an hour. But it's got a good flow to it because that was our live set, and you've got a little bit of the improvisations in there that help contour the show, to where it has some peaks and valleys. Uh, and it was different for me between Stickman and Tuner. I set out from the very beginning with Tuner to be quieter. I wanted to be a quieter drummer. So when we play Construction Light, I play it very light, lighter than I ever did. And I made sure that we got that at the front of the show. So with with Tuner, I hope we start so quiet, not unlike Crimson with Lark's Tongue and Aspic Part 1. It starts so quiet, what you actually hear is Robert's strings on stage. Even if you're in an auditorium, you're hearing that little tiny thing until it brings up in the PA. And we kind of do that too. Whereas a Stickman show, we'll start with Brutal or Red, or, we come out boom right from the
Right out
beginning.
of the gate.
We don't bring the set down until we're in the middle somewhere. But Tuner does a longer ramp in terms of the volume and the energy and how aggressive the drummer's playing. We get there, but we don't get there for an hour. Because there's a lot of really creative stuff to explore at lower volumes. And I'm a Neanderthal guy. I just get loud too fast. So I said, man, I want to be a quieter guy. I want to approach drumming differently.
Yeah, and in listening to the preview tracks, because when you pre-order the CD, you get that. I think that's what I was getting at with the textures. It was more about creating a feel and a kind of a mood, or setting a stage for the music to kind of, for everybody to kind of do what they do, which I found really intriguing. Like I said, when I was listening to the preview tracks, it was just between the fidelity of the recording.
It's really good. It's a great sounding recording.
It sounded amazing. You could tell it was recorded somewhere, but it didn't sound like it was in an arena that has a certain feel. It had an intimate but live feel to it.
Yeah, it wasn't a big church, and the drums were put back. I guess I was up at the altar. There wasn't enough depth for us in that venue to set up, closer together in a line. I was nested behind them, kind of at the altar, and then the room got a little bit wider where the guys were out there. So it provided a little different isolation for the drums. And I thought they were just really well recorded. Elvin did a great job recording them, and Eric and the other people that did the mixing. But I noticed this first time was just a board tape. When I heard a board tape, I said, man, the separation is really good. Toms were really tuned well that night. So I was really happy with the drum sound on that.
Yeah, amazing. As we wind down, first, Pat, I want to thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome.
To sit and talk and really kind of give us a deep dive and a little quick tour of the studio that you gave us as well, which is much appreciated. I've got 3 lightning round questions for you. See if you can answer them. Take a deep breath. This is an open book. It's an open book quiz, so you won't have to worry. First question, Pat, what was the first album you bought with your own money? Not that your parents bought you, but that you had your own money that you laid down.
Yeah, that was Rolling Stones' High Tide Green Grass. Rolling Stones' Greatest Hits, basically, is what that was. I already had Herman's Hermits' Greatest Hits and Dave Clark's Greatest Hits, and maybe 3 or 4 Dave Clark records, but my parents had bought those. So,
all right.
Yeah.
The Stones. We live in an age of streaming, so let's pretend that the streaming era doesn't exist. You're going on vacation. What 3 records, tapes, or CDs are you taking with you? You can't stream anything, and you have to pack like the old days, and you have to choose music. What 3 are you grabbing?
Well, that's tough because I did used to carry a lot of music on the road, like first with the Misters or early Crimson, where you'd have those maybe 10 or 20 CDs and
the
binder,
the zipper file. Yep.
Yeah, because I really had to eliminate, and I can remember a lot of the records I nested down to, like that Wendy and Lisa record I was taking all the time, the PIL record, the generic one I was taking all the times. But at this time in my life, let's think, I definitely want to take a Beatle record. I'd probably take the White Album because there's more material, and I haven't listened to it recently. I'd love to go back to that. But also Magical Mystery Tour. That's great stuff. I'd probably want to take some Todd Rundgren. I grew up as a Todd Rundgren nut,
Mm.
and what do you call that? It's like anyway, it tugs at my heartstrings. It's not just the production or
Mhm.
the Utopia, Freak Parade. That's freaking great. But the first Todd records, The Ballad of Runt,
Mhm.
those songs are beautiful. That's two. I got
That's
to take a
two.
third. Third, I'd have to take something focused on the drumming. You know what's a brilliant record Bill Bruford turned me on to? I kind of knew it, but I didn't really know it, is Dave Brubeck Drums Further Out.
No.
It's the record after Take Five.
Okay, I got to take 5 here. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget. I think it's called Drums Further Out. Man, they sound so good. Yeah. I mean, man, yeah, take a Weather Report record, man. Almost any Weather
Yeah.
Report record.
Heavy Weather.
Yeah, it's great. The Misters were an odd band in a way that the four of us didn't really necessarily love the same music. If Ferris wants to listen to Molly Hatchet and I want to listen to King Crimson, Richard Page wants to listen to the Beach Boys, and Slug wants to listen to, I don't know, some old jazzy piano. But the one thing we all loved together that we could listen to on the bus together was Weather Report.
Oh,
Yeah,
awesome.
and that's actually where the name comes from. Mr. Gone.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Weather Report.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so it's Brubeck, the Beatles, and Todd Rundgren are accompanying you on a vacation. I think that's good company. Final question, Pat. What musician throughout history would you like to meet? You got your pick from Mozart and beyond. There's nothing's off limits. Who would you sit down with?
Yeah, well, it's Hendrix and John Lennon, and they're gone. So I'm not in a hurry. I'll play with them when the time's right, I guess. So.
Cool. All right, awesome. Pat Mastelotto, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. There's going to be I'm going to put a lot of links in the show notes to Tuner, to Mr. Mister, King Crimson. I'm even going to throw the Martin Briley in there for my own thing because I'm a sucker for a good pop song. So we're going to put a link to the Briley album from Spotify or somewhere. So people can just kind of get a broad overview of the work you've done.
Martin had another great song on that record, which was the one about Ernst Angley. Do you remember Ernst Angley?
No.
He was one of the early evangelists who would tell you to come and put your hand on the screen. I will heal you. He's got a song on there, Put Your Hands on the Screen, on that same record with Salt Measures. That's awesome. A good song.
Yeah, so hopefully everybody will check that out. And lastly, the new Tuner release is coming out. By the time this episode's out, it'll be out already. So I'll link the Bandcamp link to that too, so people can kind of purchase that. And I love physical media, so I'm going to advocate for people to pick up the CD. This way you've got it with you, something tangible you can have, and then you get the download anyway. So
yeah, come see Tuner live.
You're just starting your
Brooklyn.
Your East Coast tour.
Yeah, throw the tour dates down there.
Yeah, somewhere. Absolutely. East Coast tour is starting, so that'll be covering this area that I'm in as well.
Yeah, it's only about 10 shows. Yeah, but start next week.
Absolutely. Pat Mastelotto, thank you so much for joining us. That's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. New episodes come out each and every Thursday, kind of like clockwork. We're like a machine back here pumping them out. But you can, the way you know is hit the follow button. We'll leave it there. I want to thank Pat for his time. So for Pat, this has been Dean asking you to please flip the record over when side A is done, because side B is just as good. We'll catch you later.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.